Hey everybody, it's your buddy Pete, A. Turner, executive producer and host of The Break It Down Show. Wow, today's episode is a good one, to say the least. We get a lot of incredible people, authors, musicians, PhDs, friends of mine, all kinds of just incredible people. And one of my favorite to have on is Jack Carr. Jack is a former SEAL who's become maybe the top, if not among the top action novelists, especially someone who comes from the world that he writes about, right? As a Navy SEAL, he's done the hand-to-hand combat, and he gives us this great gem. We made a short out of it, but I said, hey, how do you get the hyper detail on like the fighting stuff, like the hand-to-hand, you know? Okay, great. You name check a Kershaw blade that goes into someone's arm or whatever it's going to be. But how do you get all that motion? He's like, oh yeah, this is an inside tip. I have one of my buddies who teaches SEALs hand-to-hand combat, and he puts on all the gear that I'm writing about, and then he fights the scene, and he shows it to me on video. And so I watch him do it, and then I write about it. And so this is how he works out these complex fight scenes. Pretty damned cool. Anyhow, Jack Carr is an awesome guest. It's always fun to have him on, and because I like to look, nobody else does this. Okay. Nobody else does this. If you're new to the podcast, hey, thanks for listening. I'm Pete. I'm your buddy. I'm telling you right now, nobody else does this. So Jack Carr has made it in a lot of ways as an author. Chris Pratt said, I love Jack Carr's books. I'm going to create a production company, and we're going to make his books, his first book, into a miniseries, kind of like Jack Ryan, because a lot of what Jack Carr does is like Tom Clancy. And so they're going to make this miniseries out of it. And another guy I know is Michael Broderick. And Michael used to be a Marine, and now he's an actor. And he's like, I want to act in that series. And so he went out and made a short. We've had a bunch of those guys on the show as well. And so here's what I did. I said, hey, Michael, why don't you come on when I interview Jack, and we'll talk about The Devil's Hand together. And he's like, done. Signed, sealed, delivered. Who else has done that? Joe Rogan doesn't do this. Nobody else does this. I'm not saying our show's better. I'm just saying that you can't find this anywhere else. So I surprised Jack with Michael. And of course, Michael's on the project now with Chris Pratt and Jack. He's on that project. He's acting in it. And this is super cool to be able to bring these guys together and have this conversation. I know you're going to love it. It's Jack Carr. Who's not excited about that? All right. A couple things real quick. Hey, you can always support me and the show. A great way to do it is to go to breakitdownshow.com, grab the PayPal link right there, and just do like a monthly subscription. Whatever you want to do. And if you want me to do something for you for it, great. Let me know. Hey, Pete, I put $10 in each month. Would you have a beer with me next time you're in town? Or could you come through, or let's talk on the phone? Whatever it is, I don't care. Just help me support the show with a couple of bucks. That $10 a month that you throw in my pocket, $20, $100, whatever it is, whatever you're comfortable doing, that goes such a long way. And there's already a number of people doing this, and I'm finding that it's a fantastic way for me to take the show and put more energy and more cash into it. If I can you want to buy an ad? You want to do one thing for me? Buy an ad. Hey, Pete, I want to buy you an ad. We'll go on PayPal. We'll do the exchange. That ad allows me to go into the marketplace and say, hey, would you try my podcast out? And give, it's as if you're giving $1. Would you try my podcast out? Would you try my podcast out? And it works. People start to spin this show, and they start to subscribe. And then YouTube says, hey, look at all these people you're driving. Here's a little bit more money. And so that's how the show is growing, is all of this effort that we're all putting in as a community. You guys have been with me for a long time. We've been around for 1,000 shows. And by the way, if you're new, hey, welcome. I'm your buddy, Pete. This is a podcast that you're going to love. Again, I'm not kidding. I'm working hard, and you guys are helping me to do it. So if you're already doing something, thank you, thank you, thank you. You guys know who you are. Thank you, thank you, thank you. If you want to be part of that club, thank you. Let's do it. Hit me up, Pete at breakitdownshow.com. Tell me what you want to do to support the show. Whatever it is, I'm all ears. But the best way, the fastest, easiest way is listen on YouTube and go to PayPal and put a couple bucks in my pocket. Okay, enough about that. Save the Brave, savethebrave.org. That's my charity. We do a lot of great things and so much incredible growth. That also has been great. Thank you all for your help there. Many of you have sent me emails saying, hey, we donated our group this year, picked you guys. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Believe me, we're earning it. Things are getting better. I can't wait for Bastard's Canteen to open, a comedy from Matt Ballaker producing. I can't wait. It's going to be so much fun. We're going to do so many things. It's going to be a great year, 2021. We're getting back out on the road. That's one of the things the show is doing. John and I are going to go to Tennessee for a week, and we're going to grab a bunch of shows. All right, enough about that. Hey, holy cow, Jack Carr.
Lions Rock Productions. This is Jay Moore.
This is Greg Cruz.
This is Bryce Vine.
This is Dexter from The Offspring.
Is Nathan
This
East.
is Sebastian Younger.
This is Daryl Aney.
This is Stuart Copeland.
This is Mick Gillette.
This is Andy Summit.
This is Dr. Bob Greenberg.
This is Gabby Reese.
This is Rob Bell.
Hey, this is John Leon Guerrero.
Hey, and this is Pete A. Turner.
This is Jack Carr, and you're watching The Break It Down Show.
And now, The Break It Down Show with John Leon Guerrero and Pete A. Turner.
Hey, Jack, how cool is this? I got Michael Broderick on the show with us.
I know, insanity. Thank you. I'm so excited. It's that's one of the things I love about like doing a podcast and that sort of thing is you have an excuse to talk to people. That everybody's so busy going 1,000 miles an hour all the time that it's so helpful to have something where, oh, you know what, we can make this a business thing and we can sit down and talk to each other for like 45 minutes. And guess what else we can do? Like we just did before we started this, we could turn off all these things that beep and just talk for a little while. So that's what I love about podcasts is being able to do that, because for the rest of the day, things are beeping, things are buzzing, and you're getting pulled in 1,000 different directions. But you know, for as long as you're on this podcast, everything else is turned off and you're just having a conversation. So it's actually the most relaxing part of my day.
And check this out, as the host, I get to do this. Hey, Michael, tell us a story of how you came up with Father and Son and talk Fathers and Sons and talk about Jack about it. And you guys just tell us that story, because we all know it's out there, but we've not heard it firsthand from the two of you at the same time.
So cool.
Wow. Okay. Well, man, Jack, it's great to see you, brother.
So great to see you. I saw a picture of you on set the other day. Awesome. I'm so
did you?
So cool. Yeah, so amazing.
I've yet to see that picture. I think.
So cool. Yeah, they're super excited. I was super excited. Everybody's fired up that you're out there. So awesome. Thanks for doing it.
Well, now I guess it's official. It's out there. Yes, I booked a role on Terminal List, which is very cool, and I owe Jack for that. But Fathers and Sons, man, real quick, Jack. Today's about you, brother. But I'll get people up to speed. I've been a fan of your books, man, and when I heard that Chris Pratt was going to be doing the Terminal List for Amazon, I said, man, I got to be a part of it, especially when I saw their press release that said they wanted to involve as many veterans in front of him behind the camera. I mean, I'm an actor, man. That's what I do. So I said, this is our time to shine. I grabbed some veteran buddies. Ryan Curtis is a great director, Army veteran. Vernon Mortensen's a former Navy SWCC. He's a writer, screenwriter. And Tim Abel is actor. And we all got together and made this short called Fathers and Sons, which Jack hosts on his outstanding blog, officialjackcarr.com. You can find it there. And I shot it over to Jack saying, hey, man, I'm going to get this to production. But in the meantime, I wanted you to get eyeballs on it first. And I kind of surprised him with it. And man, I'll let you take it from there.
Oh, yeah. Total surprise. Like, I had no idea that was coming. And to have something like, sometimes when people give you a surprise, it's like, just a little thing here or there. It's not like they took a time to write an entire short film and then get everybody together to actually make this thing and then do it at a level that just blows you away. Like that whole process is next level. So yeah, I was totally blown away. Absolutely loved it. Of course, sent it off to Chris Pratt, sent it off to the showrunner, sent it off to everybody, and they loved it, and they loved Michael, and So next thing you know, here he is in the show. But that was, I got so many emails, so many direct messages from people just saying how much that impacted them because they thought of their father, and it was a lot of people from the military, but also just people, life in general. That's because everybody has this connection and going along their path and their journey and making decisions about what they're going to do in life and getting advice from a father or not. So all these things kind of wrapped up for people, and they reached out and saying they shared it with their dad. Even if it wasn't in the military, it was still this connection between fathers and sons, and it was just so powerful. And it won all these awards too. It went up to these different film festivals and won awards, and yeah, just super, super cool. So what a cool experience.
Well, that's something I think we'd like to touch on today. As far as you said, where these people connected with these people, I call those matches. And you're so good at that. With I think what attracts people, one of the things that attract people to your novels is the specificity you have with gear and everything. I don't know if we're jumping the gun. Maybe we'll get into this later, but I call those matches. When like I know what a 1911 feels like. So when like Rafe, I think it was, has a 1911, you're like, you can feel it, and you describe everything with such detail that it brings this tactile memory. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And those little matches, I call them. You know, as actors, we try to match someone emotionally, so that when someone has a match with you with something they see on screen, it triggers a sense memory or something like that. And those are the moments where something really connects with you. And so that's so great to hear, you know, the feedback you got about Fathers and Sons. And I get it constantly when I read your stuff, you know, just, you know, because like I said, I know what a Glock feels like. I know what the draw on a bow feels like. And as you read those things, especially the way you describe them in such detail, it creates these little matches, these little sense memories for yourself, and it draws you even further into that particular piece of art. And that's why I love your books.
Oh man, thank you. Yeah, I look at those tools as a way to develop characters, because they tells me so much about somebody when I see what they're carrying, how they're carrying it, those sorts of things. A lot of it, I think, comes from the 80s and how there are so many vehicles in shows that were characters in and of themselves. So now I have weapons that are characters in and of themselves in these novels. And actually, that 1911 you're talking about, that was very few things I've edited out at the end, and I think that of these novels, and that's because I don't have a lot of time in that. I have the 3 kids and wife and dog and everything else going on. So I have to be, when I sit down to write, I have to be on theme, and I have these little yellow stickies that I put on my computer: revenge for the first one, redemption for the second one, dark side of man for the third one, enemy adaptation for this fourth one, and that keeps me on track. But one thing that I did take out of the third one, of Savage Son, was even more detailed description of that 1911 that you referred to. So, but I think it's going to come back. I think it's going to come back in it, because it is it was almost a story. It was almost a book in and of itself. The story of this particular firearm could have been its own novel. So I did take that out and shave that down a little bit, but it still exists on my computer. So I'm going to weave that into something in the future for sure. I mean, I described it in enough detail to make it, to describe the character, to complement that character and give the reader a better idea of who that character is. But there's a lot more that I took out, and will make an appearance in a future novel, I think.
Awesome.
I love the gear stuff. It is fantastic, and you're right. Like in this story, Tom story, like it's doing some damage. I do have one criticism though. You name check Joe Rogan's podcast. How come not the Break It Down show? We're over 1,000 episodes here. We've been doing this for a long time too. You know.
You'll have to wait till book 5. We'll have to see what happens there. You know, it's still a developing story right now, but we shall see.
This is incredible success, man. I mean, not that long ago, you were a SEAL in a foreign country doing crazy stuff. Now I'll just go ahead and say it. You know, a lot of people think that you're today's Tom Clancy, you know, same style of writing, just as intense. You're way more on the pulse than he probably was towards the end. And that's not a knock on Tom, but at some point you get older than your audience, you know, and the times are, you know, and he had a certain style, but man, you were like 5 minutes into the future and just 5 minutes into the past with your writing. It's super tight. What do you think about all this when you think back? Like, so when I first got back to combat, I started going to yoga classes, and there's middle-aged ladies all over the place. And 3 weeks earlier, I got a bunch of 11 Bravos all around me, just jacking weight everywhere and down in protein shakes and going on patrols. And I would have started laughing because there's these middle-aged ladies in yoga pants, and I'm hanging out with them now. It's just makes you shake your head.
Yeah, well, sometimes it's good to turn that page and move on in life, and move from jacking weight in the gym with a bunch of Neanderthals to the yoga pants. That doesn't sound like too bad of a transition, actually. There are worse ones. That's for sure. But no, thank you for the kind words. Sincerely appreciate it. And yeah, I found Tom Clancy in 5th grade when Hunt for Red October came out, and that was about the time I started to read the same books as my parents were reading. And back then, I already knew I wanted to be a SEAL. I'd already spent time in the library, spent time in bookstores, spent time in the back of Soldier of Fortune magazine, sending away for everything that had anything to do with special operations. So I knew I was on this path. But back then, a lot of what I learned came from the pages of these fictional thrillers by guys like Tom Clancy, like Nelson DeMille, like David Morrell, AJ Quinnell, J.C. Pollock, Mark Olden, Stephen Hunter, all these guys who had protagonists with backgrounds typically in Vietnam. So they were either SEALs in Vietnam, they were Army Special Forces in Vietnam, they were Marine snipers, they were CIA operatives, something along those lines with Vietnam experience. So those guys were really giving me this early education in the art of storytelling. And I think this Devil's Hand is probably the most timely of all of the 4 novels to date. And it didn't start off that way. I did my outline in August of 2019, and I was on my way to and from Russia doing research for Savage Sun. Even though Savage Sun, my 3rd novel, was finished, I still needed to get that local flavor from Kamchatka Peninsula, which is just south of Siberia, because so much action takes place there. And I'd been to other places to do research. I'd been to Iraq and Afghanistan, obviously. I'd been to the other novels, already been to Morocco, already been to Ukraine. I needed to put boots on the ground in Mozambique, so I did that. Needed to put boots on the ground in South Africa to learn this man tracking from some of the best in the world. So I needed to weave that local flavor in from Kamchatka Peninsula, Russia. So point being, I left my computer behind. I left my phone behind because with my background, who knows what people have sent me over the years. And I didn't want Russian intelligence either sucking everything out of my computer, although they probably have it all anyway, or confiscating it physically. So I've outlined the whole novel longhand on my notebook. And then I got home, wove in what I learned in Russia into that 3rd novel, and then started the research into The Devil's Hand, the catalyst of which is a bioweapon attack. And so by the time COVID hit, but the foundation, even more important than just learning about infectious diseases, learning about the weaponization of infectious diseases, more important than that was the whole theme of the 4th novel is what the enemy has learned by watching us on the field of battle for the last 20 years at war. Because they're always learning, they're always adapting. And guess what? I did not know back then that 2020 was going to be such a pivotal year in our nation's history. So, as I'm writing, enemy's learning from our response to COVID. The enemy is learning from our response to a summer of civil unrest that continues even today. They're learning from a very contentious political season and election cycle. They're not just looking at these things with passing interest. They are drawing lessons and applying those to future battle plans. So it became a much more timely novel than I thought when I outlined it in August of 2019.
Wow. Hey, for the listeners who, the very few listeners who might not be aware of Jack Carr's work, I know we dove right into it at the top. So let's, you started with The Terminal List, and that was your first novel that, as you said, was a tale of revenge. The protagonist's name is James Reese, portrayed by Chris Pratt in the new upcoming Amazon series. Second was True Believer. It's a story of redemption. Third was Savage Sun, and you call that a story of the...
It explores the dark side of man through the dynamic of man. And I wanted to write that one since the 6th grade when I read Most Dangerous Game, which is a short story by Richard Connell written in 1924. But I always knew, even back then when I was 11 years old, that one day I would write a thriller that paid tribute to that short story. And I wanted to start with that one. I wanted that one to be the one I started with. But when I wrote down these 6, 7, 8 different ideas, these one-page executive summaries on the table back in December of 2014, it was very evident that, hey, the characters, particularly my main character, James Reese, isn't at that place yet where I can explore that theme. I need to introduce him to readers through this story of revenge without constraint. And it was very evident that was the one to start with, one that was so primal and visceral and hard hitting out of the gate. And then when I finished that one, I knew that, hey, still not ready. Now I need to take him on this journey of redemption. I need to continue to develop him, because hopefully we're all on a journey in life and we're all moving forward. Hopefully, if we get knocked down, hopefully we're getting back up in a way that inspires those around us. And we can learn some lessons and apply that as wisdom going forward. But we're all on this journey. So I didn't want to have just a character that's always the same, just in a new situation. Maybe it's a similar situation, but now it's like in Europe, now it's in Africa, now it's in China. I didn't want that at all. I wanted distinctly different themes to explore and a character that's continually evolving on a journey, just like all of us are. So that third one, by the time I finished the end of the second one, True Believer, I knew it was time for Savage Sun. And then after that, I took this breath and wanted to explore something that I wanted to dive deep into while I was in uniform, because I thought about it a lot as a SEAL. What's the enemy learning from everything we're doing downrange? And then what I think about today as a citizen and as an author. So this was my opportunity to do that.
Yeah, I think that was the right choice, man, because as much as I love Savage Sun, it's a hell of a ride. I think it's all the characters. There's a richness to them that I think might have been lacking if, you didn't begin with Terminalist and James Reese coming out of active duty and things like that. It just adds so much more flavor to it. And yeah, man, it's the right move. You're doing all the right stuff, brother. Obviously,
Well,
you're killing it.
And I'm just very lucky that I listened to the callings that I had early in life, both to serve my country in uniform and then to write thrillers. So I just knew those two things from an early age, and I never let go of them. I never let anybody discourage me along the way, even if whether they meant to, either maybe even indirectly, just with a look or one of those things like it's pretty difficult. Life's going to knock him down soon enough. Odds of him making it through, or odds of him getting published by a New York publisher, or next to nothing. So he'll figure that out. So I just never paid attention to those things. I just, put those off to the side and focused on my bandwidth on one, getting ready to serve my country in the military, and then two, getting ready to write these thrillers and putting all the work in on the page rather than worried about how hard it is to do these things. So it's just how it goes.
When you're trying to balance reality and fantasy, you have an obligation to your brothers on the teams and, a lot of different people, because you're bringing all these elements in together. How conscious are you with the audience's ability to jump to the fantasy side a little bit? Because you can't just take off and go attacking people and get away with it, not end up in jail a lot of times. But in that action book, people have to die. There has to be fights, that kind of thing. So how do you measure that out between, like, this is a work, they'll go this far? Because there's a lot of experts that you call on, and now they're going to have to go on this jump with you.
That's right. So I think you can ask readers in a book, or if you're watching something visually on TV or in a movie, you can ask them to take, whether if it's not science fiction, to take like one of those leaps with you, to suspend that disbelief like once. If you do that too many times in a movie, or too many times on a TV show, or too many times in a book, I think you lose that audience, particularly if you're doing something that is supposed to be timely and connected to reality, those sorts of things. So you have to, I think that's one thing that you need to think about. And the other is that magic. And that's that one intangible that you can't really put your finger on. It's not science-based. It's just the passion that needs to come across, whether you're on the screen or you're writing a novel or whatever it might be. There's that one intangible. And so that's one. But the other is, hey, this one suspension of disbelief that you're allowed, I think, with readers, because they realize, hey, this is fiction, or hey, this is a movie. It's not a documentary type thing. So I think you get one of those per book or per film. It's not science fiction, like I said, but yeah, it's I absolutely love writing all these things, and I try to like when I'm talking about, let's say, a weapon or something like that. Well, I don't just all of a sudden have this character have a weapon in, let's say, California, where this thing might be illegal, without him thinking about it or making a comment about it, because otherwise, it's just not, it's a little disingenuous to the reader. Or I have a character, just like all of us, we all have opinions on things. And I hear some authors talking about how they like to make sure that they don't upset one side or the other, that sort of thing. And that just seems bland to me, because I have opinions about things. My characters have opinions about things. They're not all my opinions. They're characters' opinions, particularly the bad guys. I mean, the main character, of course, I'd say his are very similar to mine, but some of those other characters, it's fun to explore other positions through other characters' eyes. And I really enjoy doing that part, because for me, I can think, okay, with my background, what if I was better at everything, like my protagonist is? He's a much better shot than I am. He's much stronger than I am, better boxer, better jiu-jitsu, all those sorts of things, better driver. So he's better at all this. I can say, what would I do if I was better at all these things? Okay, I can do that. But when I think of a character like a politician or a lobbyist or somebody in finance, I really have to get into their head a little bit and wonder, like, what would draw someone to do these things? And if they're an antagonist, it's a lot of fun, because you get to create someone and something that is so different from you and from your belief system, that's a lot of fun for me to explore. And those characters, hopefully it ends up being a richer reading experience because of that.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Pete.
Michael.
All right. Well, I see this question on the screen, and just kind of as a side story there. Go ahead and give us an answer for that, Jack.
Yeah, so these are these refurbished cleavers, and this one's called a Hog Splitter, and these are from Pennsylvania in the 1800s, in the golden age of U.S. steel. So these are refurbished by New West Knife Works, and they take these things and refurbish them and put different handles on and that sort of thing, but stay true to the original intent and design and want to preserve them for future generations. So these things are awesome. If you have like a huge turkey or something like that, and you're splaying it out, it's I love these things. I don't know how I survived so long without one, actually. So I love it. Absolutely. So that one's called a Hog Splitter right there. And it might make an appearance. It's going to have to make an appearance in a future novel. I don't know which one, but it's just so unique and so cool that someone's skull is going to get split with that at some point.
By the way, that question comes from Cork. Michael, I met him through Tim Abel, and Cork is a off-the-grid Alaska bush pilot guy who makes his own way and probably has a Hog Splitter, in this
That's
list
awesome.
of things that he does.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, I'm heading up to Alaska for moose in September, I think, getting back up there. So that'll be awesome.
Hey, Jack, I've been listening to your new podcast, Danger Close, which you can find on YouTube as well as, I guess, on all the podcast streaming platforms. It's outstanding. I watched today with our friend Dana Lash, and I also watched your discussion with Ray Porter today, who is the actor who does the audiobooks of your series. And one thing that kind of, I guess it shouldn't have, but I guess it caught me a little off guard was when you said, well, how do they shoot this? Because you were talking about you had yet to go to the Amazon set to see how that works. And you're saying, oh, do they shoot it all in one take? And he was explaining to you the different angles and things like that. And it's just something I take for granted now as an actor, because I've seen it, it's how they shoot things. So now that you've been on set, what was that like for you to kind of get a look at how film and television is created?
Yeah, that was crazy. So 350 people were on the set when I was there for a week of the first episode filming. And it was like a military operation. It was totally surreal, one, to see all these people there doing something based on your novel. So, and I'm just super excited to be there. But then to look around and be like, okay, we have a logistics chain in the military. You got to feed the army. Right. So craft food services, bang. And then in the military, you have the weapons guy, you have the weapons rep for your platoon, and he's accounting for all these weapons after, missions, making sure you have all your stuff when you got back, all that sort of thing. So same thing on set, there's a weapons guy, and there's 4 different weapons because some fire blanks, some are just shapes, that sort of thing to get banged around. So you have all these different weapons and blades and radios and night vision, and that all has to get accounted for at the end of filming. So that's just like a military operation as well. Or a training operation, whatever you're doing. Transportation guy, same thing. Vehicles. There's a guy that just does the vehicles on set. So that's just like the mobility guys in the platoon or in the military. So all these, then you have the directors, like the commanding officer of the team, Antoine Fuqua, was out there, and he was like the director, like setting the tone for everybody on set. And he was just such an incredible person, amazing. And then you have Chris Pratt, and he's like the platoon commander, the troop commander, which he happens to actually be playing on that set. And then I had 12 guys that I had served in the SEAL teams with, been down range with, and they're all on set either as actors or as technical advisors or stunt coordinators. So we had like a reunion on set. It was incredible to be there and seeing how they do all the different camera angles, the pushing and then the pulling. And I learned so much being on set. It was so cool to see. And I learned a ton, and it was a blast. So looking forward to getting back.
Yeah, man, it was great to be on set that day. Oh, I did want to share, since it's out there that I now have a role in Terminalist. I wanted to share. That was a gift from the director.
That's awesome. I love it. So, and I chose that name for a couple of different reasons. One, I was so close to still being in the teams when I wrote those chapters. I didn't want I didn't like a bomb to go off at one of the local bars and then have someone. Right. Even though you can just Google it and it's right there. So I did change the name, and then I kind of merged 2 of them together, and then I threw Rick in there, a little nod to Magnum PI. So
nice.
All that stuff was in there, but it's so that's why it's Rick's and not the actual name in the novel. So I use most real names for locations and things like that, but for that one was like just a little too close.
Sure. Wow, that's cool, man. And it's such it can be overwhelming when you see not only the scale of a working Hollywood set, but the speed of it sometimes. I mean, they move fast, and especially with, a pro team like you got with Antoine Fuqua and all the folks running the show over there. It's fantastic.
Oh, it was incredible to see. And everyone is so on the ball. Like, I guess I didn't know what to expect on that front. Everyone so professional, so on the ball. I was just talking to them before we jumped on here, actually, for some future stuff that's going on. And everybody just so professional and so on the ball. And I guess that's because, man, I guess everybody wants your job, and you got to be. And so much, I think, is word of mouth out there, I think, as well. Like, hey, I worked with this person before. They were awesome. I worked with this company before. They did such a great job. So I think just like in anything else, there's all this word of mouth attached to it. And if you want to continue working out there and you want to stay at the top of the game, you've got to be on the ball. There's no other option.
Yeah, it's about relationships for sure. And as you are growing your reader base and your fan base, and I'm sure you understand as well. It's, they say it's who you know, but that makes it sound like, you're constantly getting favors. It's not that. It's who you've created relationships with and made good impressions on. And sure, it's sometimes introductions, Dana introducing me to you, Dana Lash at SHOT, and I was, just then totally dove into your work, and you introducing my stuff to the showrunner over at Terminal List. It lets people know who you are, and that helps grow your stable of working professionals, or potential, fan base, I guess, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. And I think it's important for people to differentiate because a lot of times that who you know thing is I see people use it as an excuse.
Right.
Because you still need to put in the work, whether you know someone or not. You have to put in this base level of work so that when someone takes a risk on you and makes that introduction, or when someone cracks a door for you, you have this foundation of work and you're ready to kick that door in, or you're ready for someone to take a look at your work and say, oh, wow, I'm so glad that so-and-so introduced me to this person because he would be perfect for X, Y, or Z. But that might never happen, but it certainly won't happen if you haven't put in the work. So so it's definitely not the who you know. It's putting in the work right here so that when someone takes a risk on you, or someone wants to lend you that helping hand, maybe whatever it might be, you're ready to kick that door in. Without doing that base work, then none of that stuff is happening. So that's constant.
I think it's less who you know and more who is aware of you. Does that make sense? Yeah,
but even if they're aware of you, like, oh, look at this guy. That is horrible work, or he doesn't seem like he's prepared enough to do this. I don't. Well,
that's one way they're aware of you, and that's a bad way.
So it can work exactly. It can certainly work both ways. But putting in that work at the base level, so you are ready to then be a value add for someone who takes a risk on you. It's being an asset, being a value add. That's what it's got to be about. And you know what? Being a good person while you're at it. Like don't forget that part of it, because you can once again have this great foundation built right here. But if you're just a pain, like the people are going to be much less likely to help you because it reflects on them. So you be a good person. I try to tell the kids, like, never miss an opportunity to make somebody's day. Like, you put in the work and you try to help other people along the way, and then that's not a bad combo.
You work a lot in your line of work on things that you don't want to necessarily have to do, but you have to develop the capacity to market or whatever it's going to be. What are some of the things that take up your time that you're like, man, I wish I could get this hat off of my head and off to somebody else, but I have to do it because, no one's going to do it better than me right now.
That's right. And so there's a certain point where it makes sense to delegate and to create some process. I think I'm about there because I'm running 1,000 miles an hour in all these different directions all day, every day. And what I didn't realize when I started down this path was that writing is a business like anything else. And I thought you just wrote a novel, sent it to New York, started your next one. I did not realize until about a couple months, I guess, before the first novel came out, that you also need to do everything that you would need to do if you were starting a coffee shop. You have to figure out a budget. You have to do that marketing. You have to do that advertising. You have to do that social media. You have to do that engagement. You have to build a client base, or in this case, build a readership. And today you don't have to rely on your publisher to do that. They are very good at leveraging some of those more traditional means of getting the word out there. But there are things you can do as an author now that aren't dependent on a publisher. So you can engage on social media. You can thank people. You can put thought into what you're going to put out there. And I try to put as much thought into a social media post as I do into a paragraph on the book, because in both cases, people are trusting me with their time. And you only get one ride on this planet, and you get to choose how you're going to spend that time, how you're going to allocate these this limited bandwidth that you have, how you're going to allocate these resources. And you've trusted me to either read my novel or to listen to it, or to follow me on social media and actually read a post. So I take that very, very seriously. And it's something that authors couldn't do in 1975, 85, 95. You couldn't engage with someone on Instagram. You couldn't go on a podcast. You couldn't do certain things like that you can do now. And for me, I try to take that opportunity to thank everybody who took a risk on me as a new author and then told a friend about me, because that allows me to continue to write, which is what I love to do. But I also love to learn new things. And on the business side of the house, I've learned a ton. And I didn't just look at publishing. I looked across industry and looked at things like, why is getting my iPhone so different than getting my BlackBerry? Like, they put as much thought into the box as they did into the product inside the box. So I took that little lesson. How does Red Bull launch a drink? Like, all these different things. And I tried to draw from all these different businesses across industry, and then take some of those lessons and then make them my own, and then share the journey with people. Because once again, you couldn't have done that in 1985, but I can do it today. So why not?
Well, something I've been just so impressed with. Sorry, Pete.
That's all right.
I'm going to jump in real quick.
Todd, my buddy Todd DeVoe, you were hat salesman of the year as well, too, because you're sold out of your hats.
I know. My wife just came back online.
You got to sell cookies at the register because, damn.
Yeah, one of the things we're outsourcing this year, because it was my wife in the other room, and she's like, it was boxes all over the bedroom, all over the kitchen, all over the living room, and she's stuffing these boxes, dealing with customer service, printing labels, and finally we're like, all right, this is just, we can't meet this demand. It's time to, to outsource this, go to a fulfillment center. And so right now we're trying to find a fulfillment center that will maintain that level of quality as far as the customer service side of the house, while we can still put in some of these more boutique type items from my friends' companies like knives or bottle breakers or a Direct Action USA bookmarks that have a 5.56 round attached to them, that sort of thing. So we're working on that right now, which is a little more of a process than I initially anticipated. But in the meantime, we had a bunch of hats out the other day that were just sitting there, because I thought it would be a lot quicker of a process to find someone that could do this. And finally, my wife's just like, I'm tripping over these things. I'm throwing them up there. So she threw them up there, and I think they're all gone like immediately, which is crazy.
Damn, I didn't get the heads up, bro. Look, but this ties in exactly to that. I mean, you're a family man, you're an author, now you're a podcaster, and they're tremendous episodes. It's obvious that a ton of work goes in there, and a lot of prep. And you write a novel a year, man. And your social media presence is, dude, I've been taking inspiration from you, because I don't really put as much time as I could into social media, but you're always getting in there, thanking people, even writing comments, replying to people. And I'm like, how do you have time to do all that, man? And still just, putting out top level product. With your art.
Yeah, no, it's exhausting. And when that base level product has to be the best it can possibly be, like that's the foundation of everything. So then you get to choose, like, with how much bandwidth you have left over, like how you want to allocate those resources to support that main effort. Like in the military, we have the main effort, and we have supporting efforts. So one of the supporting efforts is, I like last night, my wife turned over, she's like, what time is it? Are you still awake? And I was like, ting, 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 thank you. I'm like just responding to people saying thank you. And I'm exhausted, but I'm also waiting till midnight, because I knew that this morning I had to post the podcast with Dana Lash. And I knew algorithm wise, I needed a certain space and time, but it was also an author's birthday, and I wanted to say happy birthday. So I waited till just past midnight so I could say born on this day. So I do put a lot of thought into those things. But it's one of avenues that I have chosen to interact with people, to share the journey, and at the same time build the readership. So, and I sincerely, I mean, that's why I'm up so late. If I didn't love thanking people for taking a risk on me, I would go to sleep. But I love thanking people because that allows me to do all this stuff that I love, that I've been dreaming about since I was a little kid. So I want to take that opportunity to be able to thank them. It's harder and harder though now. It's getting more difficult. I'm sure I'm missing people here and there, especially when they put something in the stories and then it's like disappeared already because I was a little late trying to say thank you. But that's just, I guess, how it goes these days, and that's a good problem to have.
For sure. That Gordie Howe had a thing like that where he's like, you aren't bugging me to ask me for an autograph. Like, I've worked my ass off to have the honor to do this, like I'm proud to be able to spend this time with you. Thank you for wanting to stand here with me, and that approach. I think it keeps you humble because you do have to consider that the audience, they are important and they can have access now. And the more human you are in that access, the better person you'll be, like you want to be, but also like the better product you are, in terms of selling hats or cookies or, bottle breacher, bottle thing, any of those things. You have to be more human than the company that doesn't have a phone number even,
Yeah. And the other side of that, though, is that with all this opportunity comes the other side, comes this no barriers to anyone that wants to comment and tell you how horrible you are and how much they hated your work. And there's no basis for it. And then so it works both ways. So, hey, if you're going to take one, you got to take the other. But, back, let's say 1985, what someone would have to do if they wanted to tell you how horrible your book was, they'd have to find your publisher, or they'd have to and find the address, or they'd have to find a newspaper or a magazine that had some sort of a literary focus on it, or a section of a newspaper that maybe on a Sunday would print a couple letters to the editor. You had to sit down and write that letter. It had to be legible, or maybe you type it on a typewriter, or maybe a word processor if you had one back in the mid 80s. You'd have to print that off. You'd have to find the address. You'd have to put on a stamp. You'd have to mail it. It would have to make it there. It would have to make it to the desk of the person that you wanted to, amongst all the other letters that they have. They'd have to then open that letter, read that letter, and then decide you weren't a crazy person. And if you were a crazy person, guess where that was going? Right in the trash. But today, guess where that crazy person's posting that review? Right on Amazon. So it's just how it goes. So you got to take one, you got to take the good with the bad, and that's just how it goes. But sometimes people think that SEALs are all super tough guys and all that stuff, and some of those reviews do hurt because some people get really mean and personal and nasty, and but it's fascinating to me that, and I can use it for character development, in that people who have this limited amount of time on Earth would choose to write 3 paragraphs about how much they hated your stuff. And hey, pro tip, if you don't like the first chapter or the first paragraph, you're not going to like the rest of it. Stop. Do not waste your time reading my novels. Like, you don't like the guns, you don't like the description of gear, then stop immediately, switch to something else, use your time in a more productive manner. But people will read the book and then write 3 paragraphs of how much they hated it and then post it on Amazon. So, it's different things for different people. But for me, it's just psychologically, it's an incredible thing to want to spend time focused on something that's so negative and bad. And I don't know. But hey, it gives me a lot to work with when I'm creating characters.
I was going to ask you a question in terms of writing. So we asked kind of the bigger question earlier. How detailed are you when you're trying to describe a fight scene? Because these things are, like hand on wrist, this thumb up, whatever it is. Are you doing like a sand table rendering of this thing and like figuring out an angle, or are you drawing it out, or is this all in your head?
I'm going to give away some secrets here. Secret stuff right here. So I didn't do this for the first one, but I did it for the second, third, and fourth. And so I'll write a scene, I'll write a chapter, and then I'll send it to a buddy who works with our top tier military units in combatives and shooting. And I'll have him give it a read, and then he'll actually put on whatever gear that I have the protagonist using, and then he'll film that fight scene for me. And I'll watch it, and then I'll take notes and be like, oh, I didn't describe this, and look what he did there. I didn't think about that. I didn't remember that you have to shift your hips this way, and then you can draw a blade here and sink it in right here, and then use the other hand to shove it. So some of those things that he is so good at, I look at it and I take notes, and I'll stop it, pause it, and then I'll write that next sentence, and I'll play it again, keep going, and I'll watch it over and over again to incorporate what he is one of the best in the world at. So that certainly helps. And this fifth one I'm writing now, I can't wait. I'm about to send him a chapter here pretty soon. It's going to give him a challenge about how he's gonna film this for me.
That's awesome. Hey, Jack, something I was curious about was Tom Clancy. Obviously, is after his career he'd been at the top of the game for a while. He expanded into other things, like they started making video games about his products. His names are on video games. I think they even did a comic book or something. But had you ever considered other kinds of properties other kinds of venues for your property, or creating a new line of books specifically for that purpose, or line of stories, I should say?
I have, and once again, this is the business side of it that's so fascinating to me, because same thing growing up. I think I saw like a Tom Clancy board game, like not quite Dungeons and Dragons, but that same type, whatever you call those types of board games back in the day. I think it was for Red Storm Rising, if I remember correctly. But so I was aware of that, and I think it's interesting when you go back and look at the history of authors in the genre and their relationship to different media, like David Morrell created the character First Blood back in 1972, and his agent was like, "Hey, let's hold on to these the rights to merchandise." And David Morrell in 1972, for those who have read First Blood, it's a little different than the first movie even. And he was like, "Well, what do you mean?" And like, "Well, like a lunchbox or something like that, and a T-shirt." And David was like, "Who's going to want a T-shirt about this Vietnam vet that comes back and refights the Vietnam War on U.S. soil?" And I feel like I should be able to say the ending of the book because it's been since 1972. But maybe I won't. So let's just say that the book ending is very different than the movie ending, and both are fantastic. But they kept that. Now, fast forward 15 years-ish to 1985, when Rambo First Blood Part 2 comes out, and there's posters, and there's lunchboxes, and there's cartoons, and there's all these spin-off, there's plastic action figures, all the rest of it. There's, toy bows and cap guns and all the rest of it. Well, that worked out pretty well. And I think Hollywood noticed this, and they closed that loophole. So it is very difficult for an author to hold on to that sort of thing these days, I think, unless you already have a universe created. So unless you're somebody maybe like a Daniel Silva, or you're Michael Connolly, or somebody with 20 books and its whole universe, you're already financially stable, that sort of thing. So I think maybe then you have a little more leeway. But if you're just starting out, they've closed a lot of those loopholes over the years for those sorts of things, graphic novels, for video games, for all that stuff. But I think I would venture a guess, I don't know this for sure, that Tom Clancy probably made more from was it Splinter Cell than he did from everything else, maybe even combined. I don't know about that for sure, but point being, he made a lot from other things other than the books. But once again, the books were the base. They were the foundation that allowed all the rest of that to happen. So that was a very long way of me saying that, yes, I've looked at all that before, and there's possibilities going forward. We shall see. But right now, it's all about making the fifth book the best it can possibly be, and continue to expand the readership with the podcast and with these other social engagement things, and then advising on the scripts and that sort of thing for the series.
And speaking of the series, sorry, Pete, you go ahead, man. I keep talking too much.
No, you're talking plenty. I'll give you a room in a second. I just want to tell this funny story about Zach Ward, who played Scott Farkas in The Christmas Story. So when he got cast, the little guy, the toady guy, was going to be the prime role there. But when Zach showed up, he was way taller because they're little kids, right? And so they're like, "We have to make you the bully." Well, Zach held his rights to any extra products, but they had never anticipated him being this character. And so what happened was someone started selling the action figures and never realized they had to pay him. And so he sued them and ended up with like 3,000 of the dolls. As part of the
No way.
Yeah. So holding the rights is a huge thing if you can possibly get it, even if you don't expect to have a doll made. Everything happened after that. It was crazy. It's a funny
That's
story.
amazing. Yeah, I remember. I think in the 80s when the first the new Batman, the Tim Burton Batman thing came out. I remember Jack Nicholson. There was something about him and rights and merchandise and that sort of thing. And I listened to Arnold Schwarzenegger on a Tim Ferriss podcast, years ago. I think I was still in the military when I listened to that. But he asked the question. He asked Tim Ferriss. He's like, "Hey, what do you think? What movie do you think has been my most financially successful thing?" And I forget what if Tim Ferriss guessed it or not, but the answer was twins.
So
And
crazy.
because they didn't take any money up front. Him and Danny DeVito, it was all like some back end stuff, and they ended up crushing on twins. And of course, I was surprised with that answer, but it's fascinating all those and how things shift over time as well, as far as what you can do, what you can't, and all these sorts of things. So it's a fascinating and dynamic environment, and for me, I'm just happy to be here.
Yeah, I was gonna just go back to the series. Obviously, there's more multiple seasons is going to depend on what Chris Pratt's schedule is or how well the first one does. I'm very confident it's going to do very well. But is there this might be a little too much inside baseball, but let's say it doesn't get picked up again for Amazon for Chris's schedule or whatever. Is there do you know if there's a possibility of it finding a new home or anything like that if down the road if something like that happened?
Yeah, I would only be able to guess at that in that it's a possibility, and there's a few different avenues to go to get it there. But yeah, I'm always learning about these things, and it's very interesting for me, of course. But yeah, I'd say it's probably a possibility if, but it's depending on too many different factors. Right now, it's cool to hear that they're even that they're talking about a second season already, and they're looking at schedules and all that sort of thing. So that's cool to hear. Even if it doesn't happen, it's cool that that it's even on their radar, which is awesome.
Yeah, I really can't wait to see because obviously when things are go from novel to screen, there's always changes or things like that. Even look at something like Game of Thrones, where there were a lot of different things, even though they kept kind of the heart of it or really important events or things like that. And I'm really excited to see what they do with this first season of the Terminal List, and then God willing, there'll be a second and a third, and it'll just keep going because I think even if they just follow the quality of the book so far and how they just increasingly get better. I'm only in the first few chapters of Devil's Hand, but man, it's already pretty intense.
Thank you. Yeah, it's crazy. The reviews, you never know. And it was crazy because I thought everybody really loved Savage Son. And most people said that was their favorite, most, let's say, I'm just taking a swag, like 90% of the people that would come back said that was their favorite. And then those same people got back and were like, man, I cannot believe how much I love Devil's Hand. It is way better than anything you've ever done before. So to hear that is, it's humbling, and I sincerely appreciate it. And I was kind of wondering the same thing too, because I've been thinking about Savage Son since I was in sixth grade. And so for people to really be enjoying and have this fourth novel resonating helps that it's very timely, of course. But yeah, it means a lot to me. And of course, they always throw on the end. They're like, okay, the bar is high now. What are you gonna do with 5? So I'm in it. I'm on it right now.
Nice.
Love it. We got to cut you loose soon, so I'll give Michael the last question. But thanks, man, so much for coming on. I appreciate it. Everybody definitely should use the Amazon link to buy Devil's Hand. I read it. I read it while I rode, and it was made the easiest 6 or so hours of rowing I'd ever done. And I thank you for writing that, and I can't wait for it. And I also thank you for when you write about Intel folks, not just making them all the stereotypical soft guy who can't do anything. Like you don't do that to your characters. You give them actual competence in the things that they can do. I appreciate
awesome. Well, I appreciate that. And yeah, I try to incorporate a lot of real world experience, but more so like the feelings and emotions behind things that I was involved with downrange to include the personalities and backgrounds of a lot of the characters. So sincerely appreciate that. Thank you.
So before you cut loose, let's talk about officialjackcarr.com. That's your home base on the web, your blog, lots of great things, great articles. You can find fathers and sons there. Instagram, Jack Carr USA. Same on Twitter, yeah?
Yep, same on Twitter and same on Facebook, but Facebook just kind of, reposts from Instagram because there's one person. It is like, it's too much. It's crazy.
Instagram's your home, brother. That's your home.
Yeah, exactly. Twitter's different. There is crossover when you look at it, but very little. Most people choose one and focus on one as a primary, especially if they're an individual person and not some sort of a company or something. So mine was Instagram. So that's where I engage primarily, but also there is a Facebook page, and then I am on Twitter as well.
And Danger Close, right? Your new podcast.
Yeah, dropping every Wednesday. Dana's dropped today, and I love that because it's a way, one, for me to have an excuse to sit down and talk with people. Like Tim Abel's coming up here pretty soon. Got to have him coming on. But it's a way for me to just sit down and talk to somebody for 45 minutes, an hour, and not be interrupted, which is kind of hard to find these days. So, and it's also a way for me to engage and answer questions or explore certain questions or topics that are better suited for that long form conversation rather than a one sentence response to a question on Instagram or Twitter, which can degenerate into insanity quite quickly, depending on how someone wants to interpret that answer. So it's much better to have intonation in your voice and body language and be able to go, oh, you know what? Did that come off? I'm not sure if I explained that quite right. What I really meant was this. Be able to do that in a way that makes sense and humanizes it rather than a one sentence answer on the social channels.
All right. So this is it. Final question. Someone aspiring, let's say someone in the military, getting ready to make that transition into civilian life, aspiring author. What would you, top piece of advice for them?
Yeah, well, there's a few, but the main one, I'll answer this to apply to everyone, not just people that want to write. But it's really to realize that you're not going to recreate what you had in the military on the outside. I saw so many people, particularly in special operations, try to do that, even if it was inadvertent, or have expectations of having this top tier team. You're not going to be shoulder to shoulder with your best friends and teammates downrange, solely focused on the mission at hand, where the decisions you make are going to have life altering consequences to those same teammates and brothers. So if you realize, and it's anything in life, like just imagine leaving any job, whether you decide to move on to something else or your company doesn't make it, or whatever it might be. That's part of your foundation from which to move forward. That's the main part, is moving forward. So being able to turn that page and realize we're always building on these foundations and try to do so in the most productive way you possibly can. But leaving the military, hey, that's one chapter in your life. Build on that foundation, even if those lessons are from failures. Even, you can learn from those, you can share those, you can make better decisions going forward based on that information. Turn that knowledge into wisdom, share it, so that you can do all these things. So it's not just writing; it's just any transition. But writing is obviously what I'm passionate about, and the other part is being to identify your next mission in life and couple that with your next passion. So what are you passionate about? What is that mission? For me, it's taking care of my family is my mission, and my passion is writing. And so I combine those two together moving forward. So being able to identify those things, articulate those things, and then make decisions based on that criteria will save you a lot of time and bandwidth. Because if you get an offer and let's say you identify, for me leaving the military, what was important to me, controlling my own schedule and having financial freedom. Okay. So if I only got the financial freedom part of it, because I had some backup plans if the writing didn't work out. So if only was financial freedom, but not schedule, it was an immediate no. I didn't need to waste any more bandwidth thinking about it. I didn't need to sit down with my wife, talk about, hey, got this job opportunity in Omaha. It's going to have to move, of course. And here's what the job is. No, we didn't have to have any of those conversations because it was an immediate no. Same thing if it was, hey, you can control your schedule, but the financial part is not gonna be there, or there's no potential for it to be there. Well, once again, immediate no. So that really saves time and allows you to concentrate where you need to. So for authors specifically, it's the same thing that Brad Thor told me as I was getting out of the military. And he said, the only difference between a published author and an unpublished author is that the published author never quit. And that really resonated with me.
I'm loving it.